Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lindsay Lehr with Payments and Commerce Market Intelligence, and I'm so pleased and excited to welcome you to our webinar today, entitled The Payment Habits of Latin American Gamers. We're in partnership today with PagSeguro, one of Brazil's leading fintechs, part of a very exciting digital ecosystem, which includes digital banking, acquiring business and cross-border business, primarily in Brazil, but actively expanding across Latin America. And we've partnered today to bring you a really exciting bit of content, diving into the specific behaviors of gamers in Latin America. And this content is, I'm very fond of this content because it's quite unique. Throughout, as we've studied the evolution, the digital evolution of Latin America, we know digital goods and gaming in particular has been ramping up, but we've never seen such a detailed study on this population in particular. And so we're excited to bring you some great insights about the behaviors of gamers related to how they're interacting with games, how they're interacting with payment methods, and how to help both payment processors and merchants really optimize and maximize the potential in this growing industry. So we have some great content today, and I'm really excited to dive in. A couple of housekeeping items before we go ahead. Remember that we have a presentation today, but we are going to take your questions at the end. So please remember to type your questions in using the toolbar there at the bottom. And you will receive the materials today after the webinar is completed. And the presentation today is the result of a detailed study and white paper that is available for you to download, and we're going to share the details of that towards the end of the session. Okay, quick legal notice. It's been up here for a few seconds now, so hopefully you've had a chance to read it. Of course, just like anything, please take all information you learned today in combination with other sound business practices. Okay, so going ahead, I want to just take a moment to introduce my esteemed colleagues today who will be helping me present our content from PagSeguro. First of all, I'd like to introduce Managing Director Caio Costa. Caio, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome.
Lindsay, it's a pleasure to have you to be here with you. As you said, we have great content today, so happy to share with the market.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we're also joined by Claudia Feijão, Senior Account Manager at PagSeguro. Welcome, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. Exactly as you said, we are very excited to be sharing this content in this webinar. Yeah.
Excellent. And then, as I said, I'm Lindsay Lehr, Managing Director of PCMI. The team and I helped to conduct and execute the research we'll be sharing today. And really what we want to do is share the results of this piece of research and ask our speakers here to elaborate on that research, provide some additional insight from their very hands-on perspective in this industry. Okay, so if we go ahead, we'll tell you a little bit about the work we did to develop the content today. Right. Again, as I said, we've never really seen a piece of research that dives so deeply into the gaming population specifically. So we conducted a survey with over 2,000 gamers in 6 top markets, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, and Peru, to understand their behavior within the gaming industry with respect to devices, console types, purchasing channels, payment methods, and how they prefer to interact with gaming, their expectations for quickness and agility in payments, and other types of preferences and behaviors. So we're going to dive into these details. But before we do that, I want to ask you guys at PagSeguro, why, let's start with you, Caio. Why is this an important industry for PagSeguro? Why did you guys decide to work on this study?
Well, we have a lot of experience with the gaming vertical, right? We've been serving the gaming platforms, the giants platforms, for more, I would say, 10, 20 years. So, and we see that we still a lot of information or details about this vertical that the payment industry does not know. So one of the things that we see is gaming is, we have a growth since the pandemic. So, and gaming is a really entertainment way for Latin Americans. So we want to share this with the payment industry, and we think we can help the industry, the payment industry, to serve better the gaming vertical. So based on our experience.
It is quite a specialized industry, right? That's going to require a little bit of expertise and knowing how to support this industry. Claudia, how about from your side?
Yeah, adding to what Caio was saying, gaming is in our DNA. We have over 20 years experience in this area. I have the privilege of being working in this company for over 10 years, and this has meant a close relationship with a lot of the players, the big gaming companies that are part of this portfolio, going through this journey even before the pandemic and now afterwards. And we felt we could add value by doing this research, doing it together with you, exactly in this sense. Like we know the customer journey from the beginning, from when we are talking to a company that wants to penetrate this market, up until the moment when we have our dedicated customer support talking to the end user, talking to the gamer, and having that deep knowledge of how important it is for a gamer that is so severely engaged in the game he's playing at the moment to get that payment done or to surpass any difficulty that happens. So this is also why we felt we could add value, and that it made total sense that PagSeguro would conduct this study.
Okay, perfect. It's interesting because it is clear that purchase in gaming is different from a typical e-commerce transaction, right? So we'll see why that is and what those differences mean for both the game publishers, merchants, and payment providers supporting this industry. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just start off by looking at the gaming industry in general in Latin America. Okay, so here we have the population of gamers, and what really kind of surprised me when doing this research is how deeply penetrated Latin America is with respect to gaming. Okay, it's possibly considered a small industry on the global scale. Okay, we have our Latin America representing around 4% of the global gaming industry. But when we look at the numbers, actually within the region, we have over 300 million players. Okay, and that's, I mean, that's more than half the adult population. And then what's even more interesting to me is the number of payers, those who have claimed to make a purchase within a game in the last 6 months. So that stat was surprising to me, and it just kind of awakens us to the opportunity here, and also the importance of optimizing payments in this space. And look how, of course, Brazil is always the largest, but in anything we look at from a pure numbers perspective, but we can see how important Brazil and Mexico are. But even smaller markets like Peru and Chile, you've got 30% of the population already active in gaming. So no matter which market you go to in the region, we're finding a captive audience. Okay, so if we go ahead, looking a little bit at some global statistics, what I also find really interesting is the growth trajectory of the industry in Latin America. So these numbers demonstrate growth, right? Growth of players, growth in total transaction volume, and the spend per player, average spend per player. So what I think is quite interesting is, this is 2021 to 2022. So we're still in pandemic, right? In this time frame. But notice how there's actually negative growth rates in Asia and Europe. So and North America, more developed economies with respect to digital goods and digital experiences in general, probably experienced a huge peak in gaming in 2020. And then, came off of that a little bit in 2021, 22, but we don't see that in Latin America. We actually see continued growth and continued acceleration. So let me ask you both, and we can start with you, Caio. Can you speak a little bit to this growth trajectory? What's driving this growth? What are the trends you can tell us about what you're observing in Latin America?
Well, first of all, I think, Lindsay, you mentioned the size of the number, let's say more than 200 million users or gamers, let's say, in the region, right? So it's a really big number. When we look at it, it's more new quantity of gamers than really spending. So what we saw is the pandemia really took this new players into the gaming world, and then we have much more users than before the pandemia, right? So, and the spending is increasing, but at the same not the same speed of the number of gamers, right? So Latin America today, 48% of the population they consider to play a game. So that's a lot. When you look into the e-commerce world, we say that the penetration of e-commerce world is 60% of the population. So this is a trend which we are seeing, and the other thing is what we can talk about gamer is they are really early adopters, like in Latam. So and they are really expecting good experience when they are interacting with the games, when they are purchasing gaming. So we're going to talk a little bit this further, but this is how we are seeing. So number of gamers really increased, I would say, in the last 2 years, right? So this is really what we are seeing. The spending is not in the same path of growth, but the number of gamers, yes, it's really impressive.
And that makes sense that, as you get new adopters into gaming, they're still experimenting, they're figuring it out, and probably that spend will pick up as a second phase as gamers become more accustomed, they become more saturated, they start saying, oh, I really do actually want to make this purchase and advance in the game. And so we can see that pattern holding. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and look just a little bit at, who are, you mentioned increasing number of players in Latin America. So let's look at who Latin American gamers are, right? Probably in our minds, when we think of gaming, we think of a male, maybe 25 to 30 years old. And we think of these like gigantic, kind of almost like spaceship style consoles and PC setups, right? And that's the traditional early adopter, right? That's the, professional style gamer. But what's interesting is actually when we look at the data, of course we have those profiles, but we have a much greater diversity of gamers. As you mentioned, Caio, you have more and more folks entering the industry. So actually, across the industry, about 40 to 46% of gamers, depending on the device, are female. This is something that is interesting. And we're seeing increasing diversity of age, right? In the pandemic, we saw actually the average age of gamers go up as older people started to try out gaming. And of course, younger generations are also early adopters. And we're seeing as young as 12 years old or even younger start to experiment with gaming. So increasing diversity. And then when we look at the payers, 66% of Latin American gamers have said to have made a purchase in the last 6 months, and 50% are frequent purchasers, defined as making a purchase at least once a month. So we actually have a lot of transactionality occurring, and probably I think we'll learn there's a lot to do here to optimize and make sure that this experience is successful and optimized for everyone. Okay, so if we continue, thinking about how often Latin American gamers play. And, we're all so connected to our devices these days, especially after the pandemic. And it's no surprise that, gamers are spending a lot of time gaming. And so here we have the hours per week. And the most common group here is 1 to 4 hours. Light casual players, I'm going to play 1 to 4 hours. The heavy users who are here in purple are those playing 10 or more hours per week. And of course, males are a little bit heavier, but you also have decent amount of females. And then when we look at the markets, pretty similar, consistent results across the markets, Brazil being the heaviest market and Colombia being the lightest market. But, they're all within a range of 12 to 20%. All right. And again, males around, the average is 33 years of age, male, higher socioeconomic level because of the high cost of consoles, computers, and the game titles themselves. But again, this is changing as the industry matures. Okay, and then if we go ahead, I think looking at, as I started to learn about gaming, I really understood the complexity of this, because you have, in e-commerce, we think about mobile and PC. In gaming, you have an additional channel, you have an additional device, which is console gaming. And the three of these kind of interact and intersect and have different, device drives behavior. And I think that's something that we're going to start to hear about in our discussion. Device really drives behavior. And so more professional early adopters of gamers are going to gravitate towards PC gaming, also console gaming. But mobile is actually the #1 device platform, simply because of its accessibility, right? Almost everyone has a smartphone. You can play mobile games anywhere you have an internet connection. And as 5G, 4G, and 5G networks improve and expand, this is going to drive mobile going ahead. So in every age group and in every market, mobile is the primary channel, with PC and console gaming not too far behind. Okay, and just one more slide here, kind of on the overview of gaming in general, is looking at some of the games and the types of games that consumers play. We wanted to just kind of provide this overview to really ground us in the industry. You know, what are the actual titles that people are playing, and look again at the variety of them. We have fun casual games like Candy Crush. Probably everyone on this webinar has at least tried Candy Crush or something similar to it at some point. You've got sandbox games, which are, you know, creative, free-thinking games, which tend to be quite popular with kids. And then you've got more advanced games that are more time-consuming, more intellectual, more strategy-oriented. Esports, especially in Brazil, have become very professionalized, in fact. And so you've got a huge variety, which again speaks to the increasing diversity of gamers being attracted to the industry. And notice also that almost all of these, the most popular brands here, all of them are from outside the region, from the US or from the Asia regions primarily. And so how are they successfully selling to Latin Americans? That's like a question we're going to begin to look at. And what do these and others need to do to really optimize and localize and make sure that they are competitive when selling to Brazilians, to Mexicans, to Chileans, to Peruvians? All right. So if we go ahead, let's get back to our speakers here. I want to invite Claudia to tell us a little bit about, you know, can you talk to us about the trends that you're observing across devices, right? And especially with the changing role of mobile. We can go back, if we can go ahead to that last slide. We will dive into the mobile trend. There we go.
I'm very happy to. And first of all, I think you have done an amazing summary of what this study conducted and some of the major things that we can see. And most definitely, we need to look at the Latin landscape in a little bit of a different way. So as you were saying, we do see on our day-to-day basis, we do see this trend of mobile being on the center and being a focus that is absolutely important. So yes, we did change as a society. Obviously, we all did. What we see specifically in gaming on the Latin behavior is exactly that. Everybody has a smartphone on their hands, so it became much more easy or accessible. If we think about gaming 10 or 15 years ago, when Latin was an emerging market, we could not have someone sitting in Latin America competing on a PC or a console game with someone that was in other areas of the world. That is very different right now. And as we change as a society, the gaming itself has also changed. And being very passionate, very driven, we did see the trends inside gaming changing, even in regards to the kind of games that you play. So that, of course, is going to have an impact to any company that wants to come to this market. And as an account manager, that's one of the things that is key in what I do on a day-to-day basis, which is talking to someone that's on the other side of the globe, that is used to a kind of user behavior, and that now is adapting to a different reality. Because, for example, we also mentioned that the female audience, the casual games, they are augmenting. So that idea that we have years ago of someone with 4 screens, with a heavy equipment, being the best in class, is something that might not happen today. You might have someone that is much younger that has an Android in its hands, and it's going to beat everybody in a battle royale kind of game. So this is very different for the gamer, and then obviously becomes very different for a company that has a product to sell, and probably they know how to monetize it in Asia, in Europe, in North America. But then here comes this beast, South America, with a different behavior and a different landscape. One of the best examples is exactly the one that you have pointed on the top left corner, which is, of course, there's a higher volume coming from game titles itself, but in-game purchase is rising, and it's incredibly important. And here we are talking about a completely different behavior. I know we are going to talk about it in much more detail, but if you are using a console and you are used to using your credit card, there's an energy to it. You are used to doing it that way. But if you are in the middle of traffic and you have your game with you to kill some time, and then suddenly that game is going really well and you really want to win that fight, the way you are going to interact, the way you are going to demand for those payment methods to be fast, for everything to be faster, is going to be important. So mobile gaming is for sure something that a company that is looking to penetrate Latin America needs to pay attention to customize to it, and also to make sure that you can monetize in this fresh culture.
And I love the example you gave. Unfortunately, it is a reality that people will be playing games in traffic.
No, I was hoping the person in my example was waiting for the bus or waiting for the subway. Okay, not driving. Okay,
not at a stoplight, but you better have a fast payment that's approved instantly if you're playing.
Exactly, because then you need to sit. Exactly.
But look how but in seriousness, if you look at this data here, you see how much in-game purchases is so important to the mobile channel. It's important in all these channels, but comparatively, mobile, yes. You know, it's really driving that. And Caio, what were you gonna jump in?
Now, I was gonna say that when looking from the payment provider perspective, is how you prepare your platform for different types of payment journey, right? So one thing is you having like a gamer in the middle of a game, and then he stops to see or buy a currency of the game, right? The other thing is a title, which is the value of the title is much higher than just a currency. So they are different journeys. They are in different devices. So this makes a lot of the change, or impacts a lot on the journey of purchase. So this is one of the things to consider, right? So important to consider that if you go into mobile, this user or this gamer is going to be in-game purchase a lot, and this should be instant, should be really precise in the way that you provide your service in terms of payment. We're going to talk a little bit more on the next slides, but I just want to highlight this point because it's one thing important for the payment provider to consider.
Well, and that's a perfect segue, Caio. So if we go to the next slide, we can actually take a look at the detail of types of things that customers are buying, right? So, you know, if you're not a gamer, you'd be surprised at the variety of purchases that people are making. So game titles, right? That's the obvious one. I'm going to purchase the game. I'm going to purchase the license or whatever. But there are many other ways to spend money in gaming, right? Game expansions and game upgrades, game currencies, which you just mentioned, customization, skin, avatar, outfits, weapons, its powers, health and strength items, and then of course ad-free versions, which is going to be especially important in mobile, right? So and these purchases will vary depending on the device that you're in and the type of game and the type of device that your game is most suited for. So we have a lot of complexity here. This is kind of one of the reasons why gaming is different from a traditional e-commerce flow. You have all these additional complexities. And so we've spoken a lot about this, but looking at the difference across region, it appears, just looking at the data, in-game purchases are particularly high in Brazil and Peru. They're prevalent kind of everywhere, but we kind of see Brazil and Peru calling out. So Claudia, what explains this? Why are these markets particularly heavy? And also, what does this mean? Caio, you pointed to it, but what does this mean for the payment experience?
Exactly what you were saying. This is a completely different vertical from others. Like in retail, something that is fashionable in a moment in time can work in 5 countries exactly the same, and everybody is going to start preferring that kind of jeans. So you just need to organize your page to show that specifically. But the example shown here, which is actually something that we do see with the clients we work with, is that, for example, Brazilian and Peruvian players are more mature. What this means in comparison to, for example, in comparison to Mexico, this means that after purchasing a title, and sometimes it's not even purchasing a title, sometimes there are free titles that then, for example, you want to remove advertising and then you want to complement whatever you are playing. It can be a skin, it can be a weapon, anything in game. What happens is the Peruvian and the Brazilian markets are much more mature. So that means the in-game purchases have a specific focus and a demand. Obviously, we're going to cover, we work in payments. That's one of the things that, of course, we're going to be talking about. But just to give you this idea, you cannot treat LATAM as a whole. You cannot assume, and this is the typical. I would say that a lot of the merchants that come to us, they are firstly and foremost interested in Brazil because it's the biggest, because PagSeguro is a huge brand, a really well-known one. It's trustworthy, so people tend to immediately think about Brazil, and then they assume they can just build things exactly the same way for the other countries, and that is not a reality because the users are going to behave in a different way. And this slide literally points our attention to this topic. Like Peruvian players are going to behave in a similar way, Mexican ones are not. So it is really important that when penetrating this market, you try to understand its specifics, and you do it properly. So it's important to partner, to understand. There are a lot of specifics. I'm not going to start talking about laws and taxes and so on and so forth. But this is a reality. You will spend a lot of time thinking about taxation in those countries. You will spend a lot of time looking at your checkout and optimizing it and making sure you are giving that player exactly what he is looking for, and that is different from country to country.
Perfect. Well, you're convincing me that these markets operate differently, and as we kind of even peel back the layers of the onion, we'll see how complex this can get. So if we go to the next slide, just to add additional, so a couple more layers to these behaviors, we also have. So we've talked about game devices, the types of games, the way people spend money, but of course there's also diverse buying channels in the gaming industry. You've got your mobile app store, you've got marketplaces, you've got console stores, you've got publisher websites, you've got other channels where people are accessing these digital goods. Mobile app, of course, because mobile is the #1 channel, makes sense. Mobile app store is going to be the #1 buying channel, but there are many others. And so that's one additional layer we add to this. And then we also see on the right-hand side here, buying models, right? One-time purchase versus subscriptions. And subscriptions are actually quite prevalent. Around 1/3 of consumers, of gamers, have claimed to have a gaming subscription, and which is another payment complexity, right? A recurring payment. So how can we, balance, how can we understand, Claudia, all of these preferences, and what is important to consider to guarantee we're providing that optimal and supporting these diverse habits and preferences?
One of the things that we saw and is reflected in the study is, of course, we have mentioned enough times that mobile is very important and it's big on the market. And we need to pay attention to the fact that Google and Apple Pay are very strict in the way they work. And one of the things we have seen is that a lot of gaming companies actually prefer to have a top-up page on their website. So, of course, they do offer Google and Apple Pay, but at the same time, they are able to customize the checkout to their needs. They are able to do promotions. And as we were saying before, Latin America users are very passionate and engaged, and everybody has a cell phone in their hands. So the amount of forums that exist with hundreds of people there communicating, drawing the attention of, hey, you have a promotion here, there is something happening there. So we do see a lot the choice of having a top-up page. And also really worth mentioning that the female population is growing. So again, we go back to the in-game purchases and the importance of customizing to the public you are appealing to. Yeah.
Terrific. Caio, anything you want to add to that?
No, one thing that I would like to highlight on the right side is the subscription, right? So this is again, looking from the lens of a payment provider, this is really important to have, service and solutions that will allow the game platform to serve better the gamers, right? So, and this is a key thing because it's revenue, right? So this brings certainty in terms of revenue. So it's really important to have tools and solutions that will support the subscriptions transactions. And this normally what we see is that if they subscribe on a monthly basis, this is really a heavy user or have gaming, or they have high frequency. So we're gonna see ahead that frequency is attached to spending. So subscriptions is also a thing that we need to look at it. So that's a really key. It's not that one-time purchase. Of course, when you look at mobile is a different payment journey, but besides the mobile, yes, subscriptions is really important, let's say, type of transaction. So for a payment provider to guarantee revenue and also to guarantee that the gaming platform is happy with the service that they provide, they need really to perform well with the subscription transactions.
Got it. Excellent. Okay, so moving ahead, we've covered kind of all of the different flavors and nuances that this industry can have. And so that, all of these complexities, of course, create a lot of opportunity for customers to abandon a purchase. There's so many ways to support or not support preferred behavior. There's just, and as you said, I love the insight, Claudia, that gaming is unique in that everyone is in these online communities and they're communicating, and this communication can become viral. And so if there's a bad experience, that is probably going to get communicated very rapidly, just as if there's a promotion or a good experience or some opportunity, that's also going to be communicated very rapidly, unlike, again, traditional e-commerce. So let's talk a little bit about purchasing behavior, right? And actually what's promoting or discouraging a successful transactions. The first thing I want to point out is, on the left here, we have what is the primary factor in selecting a payment method. So when I go to pay, what is going to determine which payment method I select? And the number, the number one response is my payment quickly confirmed, right? We talked about the need to get players moving. They don't want to be struggling with a payment. They want to play their game. They have an objective in mind and they want to get to that objective, right? And a lot of times, especially for an in-app game, the purchase is very small. And so there's a low ticket. So there's very low tolerance for any kind of friction when you're paying, when you're making a small purchase like that. Number two is the ability to pay with my preferred payment method, which, wow, that is very telling. And we're going to actually look at preferred payment methods in a moment. But that speaks to, how key it is to customize this journey. On the other side of that, what are the factors causing checkout abandonment? The number one being if I cannot pay with my preferred or most used payment method. And that speaks volumes to the importance of this checkout experience and really making sure that you're not creating unwanted friction for the user. So let me go to you, Caio. You know, giving this data and your experience, how can payment providers and gaming companies work together to minimize shopping cart abandonment in this industry?
It's a challenge because when we talk about quickly confirm, that means that it's seconds, right? It's even less than seconds, right? So payment provider, when we talk with the game platforms, the first conversation that they want to have with us is, how is your performance? How is your approval rate? How is your conversion rate? So that's why is that? Because they lose money. If we don't perform well, if the payment service does not perform well, or translating this into approval rate, if the approval rate of that transaction is low, so they're gonna lose that purchase, right? That's the way it goes. So that's one of the things. The other thing which is really important is the variety of payment methods. What do we call coverage, right? So when you look at the Latin America, it's not about just cards. We're going to talk a little bit further about this, but it's not just about cards. So it's about cash, it's about transfer, it's about other payment methods. So you need really to have coverage in terms of type of payment methods. We are seeing also wallets really increasing share on payment on purchase, on payment purchase. So that's one of the things that I see and I want to highlight here. And of course, each country has their own specific, let's say, culture in terms of payments, right? And when we talk about Brazil, we're seeing like Pix, increasing in a daily basis, so adoption is really high. Like Peru, for instance, we have also, we're going to talk a little bit about this, we see a lot of cash. So coverage, performance, this is really key for the, let's say, for the game platform or the game provider with the payment, let's say, with the payment provider to work together and to ensure that they will serve this gamer very well. And as we said before, they are early adopters and they are looking for a good experience. If they don't have a good experience, we're not gonna have them for much time, right?
100%. And I can imagine that this is so crucial, especially for games with a freemium model, because you're going to have lots of players who will never make a payment. They're just there to kind of check out the game, but you're not making any money off of those customers. And so the ones that are willing to pay, you can't be leaving money on the table because of a poor payment experience, right? That's, death by 1,000 cuts, right? To a merchant who's operating in a freemium model, which is growing because of the prevalence of mobile. So you mentioned payment method. Let's go ahead. And actually, this is my favorite slide. There's a lot of data here. You guys will have to look at this in more detail. But of course, we're all about payments and payment methods at PCMI. So I want to call out a few things. So on the left here, we have the payment method that is most often used when purchasing gaming. And credit card is, if we look to the right here, we see this column, the average of the 6 markets. And so credit and debit cards are the most used. Okay, but we do see a quite significant role of bank transfers, of digital wallets, and even of cash. And so, and notice that if you look at the numbers, people are selecting more than one payment method. So they're going to be using different methods according to what's accepted, of course, in that moment. But if you look on the right, this demonstrates their preferred payment method. And if you recall the slide before, the number one reason for abandoning a purchase is they don't have my preferred payment method. And so what we see here is that credit and debit cards are the most preferred, right? 31%, 37%, 36%. And so, that supports this story around cards being so important. But the other side of that, if we take this number 31%, that means 69% of customers do not prefer a credit card and have some other type of preference. And so look at the numbers for digital wallets. We see cash even being important in certain markets and in certain circumstances. So I think that's quite, that's an impactful number, right? 69% are not going to prefer a credit card and want some other type of payment method. So let me ask you guys, this is a snapshot, right? This is a static numbers. How do you see these numbers evolving over the next year? Are the numbers going to look the same the next time we do the survey in a year's time? Are we going to see some gaining share, some losing share? What do you think?
Actually, if I may start, then looking at a slide that has so many information and so many numbers there, I feel like it's really important for us to remember ourselves that behind those numbers are people. I still remember one of the first conferences I went, there was a gaming company sharing a story that on the night before, they still have the jerseys on with the game stated there, and they were out for drinks, and then suddenly they were approached by a bunch of guys that were like, hey, I have paid my charge back, can you please unban me? I am still banned on the game. And this is something that they brought to the conference because they were incredibly worried about the graphics and the gameplay and all of that. And suddenly they were shocked about how human this is, how we are touching people's lives, how you are playing a game with your free time in your house, and sometimes you really are incredibly engaged. So there's a cooperation here that goes from having the best graphics, having the best gameplay, and then having the best payment and the best follow-up, because the payment journey starts in the moment when the gamer decides, okay, I need this skin, and then finishes after the purchase is made. So there are many things that are required, and in that sense, it's very important to have this cooperation. And then also, I think it's incredibly interesting that we have the most used and then the preferred, because exactly as you were saying, we see that credit cards are dominant. Yes, probably in some, for example, for console, credit and debit cards are going to be preferred because historically they are the ones that are there, and it's a different kind of purchase because sometimes you wait a whole year for a game that it's only going to be launched in September. So you are very driven, you are going to buy that game. Maybe you even saved money to buy that game. So it's a flow for which you are calm and you have your time. But then it is very important to understand which are the preferred payment methods and how that is evolving. So it is incredibly important, of course, to have credit cards, to make sure that you have local credit cards in the countries where they make sense, debit cards, that you have the wallets that are incredibly important for mobile. Or, for example, in the past years, we have seen the explosion of Pix that I'm going to let Caio explain, because I would never, as a Portuguese, be able to explain Pix as a Brazilian who is sitting in São Paulo and has that feeling in his day-to-day life. But this is to say, and then you have the cash-based methods. So it is very important to complement your offer and to make sure that you are gathering all of that and that you are truly reaching without excluding. And for me, this graphic is very, very visual in that sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, you said the magic word Pix, right? That everyone is just following and understanding and trying to learn how Pix is evolving, is transforming every digital business. So Caio, can you tell us a little bit about your experience and what you guys are observing with Pix?
Yes, I mean, Brazilians adopt Pix right away, right? It's really easy to pay. One thing that's really important is instant. So you do this in seconds. So this allowed a lot of the Brazilians that would not have a credit card, for instance, to enter in the e-commerce business or to purchase things in the e-commerce. So of course we have in Brazil boleto in other payment methods, but Pix is, I would say, really transformed the experience on e-commerce. And we know that a lot of the Brazilians, they still don't have access to credit, right? So that's one of the things. So it's really democratization here in terms of payment service. So no brainer, if you're looking for to provide a payment service to a game platform, you should have Pix as one of the payment methods, right? And so the other thing I see here when we look at these tables and as we discuss how we understand more in details the segment, which bring to us, which one size does not fit all. So you have specifics by country, you have specifics by device, you have specifics by type of purchase, right? If it's game title, in gaming. So this should help game platforms and also payment providers to do better segmentation of the clients, right? So how they approach better the clients, how they serve the clients, how they bring more revenue. So I think that that's a kind of when you add the pieces to a segmentation analysis, then you're going to be much more, let's say, precise in the way you approach the customers, the gamers itself, with the right payment method, with the right, let's say, promotion or discount, and even considering the device they have on their hands, right? So
I'm
I
starting
think
to
that's
see and
yeah,
understand that segmentation is so crucial to
yeah,
understand
yeah,
who are you selling to and what are their behaviors. So I mean that's
yeah,
true in any
yeah,
digital experience,
yeah,
but
yeah,
definitely here. So
yeah.
let's move ahead and talking about preferences and optimizing spend. The question of installments, which we know in e-commerce in Latin America is critical, but we may not expect it to be so relevant in a digital product. However, according to our data, gamers using installments are going to spend 65% more per month than gamers who do not. Now, that is a pretty impactful stat. So Kyle, to your point about segmentation and just customization, what are some strategies merchants can use to maximize revenue and increase spending?
For sure, installments, right? We see a lot of this in Brazil because Brazil has a culture of installments, like the country has, used installments as a way to sell more, to increase spending. The other thing that we see is how we connect frequency of playing. So that gamer has more frequency, more hours of playing during the week or during the month. This is really attached to the potential of spending or purchase that he can do in the platform. And the type of device, again, this changed the journey, the payment journey, and changed also the size of the spending, right? When we are talking about mobile, we talk about in-gaming, which is less spending. But if you go to console, if you go to PC, you're gonna have a chance to have subscription. You're gonna have a chance to increase your spending. You have a chance to have more, to sell more game titles, for instance, right? So this is the mix, I would say, the matrix that we have here, which is very interesting when when you're planning to reach customers, right? When you're planning to sell more, when you're planning to increase your spending, right? So, and of course, each country has their own, let's say, customer or gamer profile, as we are seeing. So, more age in Peru, so younger in some other countries. So this should be considered also, because all the purchase is related to income, right? So the spending is related to income. We cannot forget this, right? This is
Absolutely.
related.
And related to income, and I love what you said about frequency. The more someone is engaged and the longer they're on the platform, the more touch points you have, the more likely you are to make a purchase, right? And so in that segmentation, you want to be targeting your highest income customers and those who are most engaged and who are going to be your low hanging fruit. So, so thank you for mentioning some of those strategies. And if we go ahead, just to take a quick look at frequency again, this issue of frequency, the majority of gamers playing from 1 to 4 hours per week. Okay, but we do have a decent amount of heavy users who are probably going to be your biggest spenders, who are going to require a different type of strategy and flow to optimize their purchasing. But let's not forget about these 1 to 4 hour guys. As they increase their spending and their frequency, they're going to be more willing and more interested in advancing in the game, making in-game purchases to make their experience even more enjoyable. And so again, I think this just goes to segmentation and really understanding the behavior of your users. Okay, and if we go ahead on this topic, losing a headphone. What pushes gaming spend? You know, we know that Latin Americans are very receptive to promotions, right? Black Friday, hot sale, e-commerce day around the region is extremely successful. And we've seen that that's no exception in gaming. And actually, if we look at the data here on the right, you know, when are you most likely to spend money on games? 72%, a huge difference from all the other responses said when there are promotions and discounts, right? Free items and discounts are going to be the best way to incentivize users. And so let me ask you all, of course, this, you know, when you have a promotion, the merchant is going to experience a lift, right? So what are some strategies or recommendations you have on working together with merchants to guarantee a smooth transaction during these promotion times?
I'll let Claudia to talk about this with all her experience with the gaming platform. So she has a lot of cases here to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, we need to respect our client base. Gamers are savvy digital users. They communicate, they know when the promotions are coming, they know when the games are going to be launched. And especially in Latin, there is this sense of community and the information is shared. So when we as a payment provider are talking to a company that is trying either to penetrate this market or that is already established, and what they want is to boost the portfolio, to bring new players, the planning of promotions is a cooperation game. There are a lot of things we need to tackle. Of course, the gaming company knows the game best, so they know when is the best time to do it, or they know their gamers and have that the best understanding of, should I create a really special skin and I'm going to release it on a special period, or let me have a promotion on a bunch of games. What is very important is that you are truly engaged with everyone that is local. So with your local provider, you have that understanding of which payment method is exploding and is so important. Where should we focus our promotion? And the best thing is to coordinate. One of the things sometimes we don't think too much is we need the technical ability for that boost in sales. We need to have our customer support ready and engaged, understanding what happened in this promotion, because a silly thing of a time zone change might mean that someone bought something assuming they were in the time zone, and then the headquarters is in another. So sometimes we have this small things to tackle, and
small details that can escape us, right? That makes such a big impact. Absolutely.
Those small details. But the first thing you should know is that one, the importance of having promotions, of driving the gamer to be involved and to be engaged, and then to have the best coordination possible. You should tell your payment provider that you are going to have a sale weeks ahead, so that everybody is ready.
Amazing piece of advice. I love those specific nuggets. That's really impactful. So you spoke, Claudia, about localization, right? But let's go to the next slide. The importance of being engaged at the local level. And it's logical. I mean, people want to consume in their own language, in their own currency. We see the data. Absolutely. But what else can you tell us? Why is localization important? You know, what does it improve, in your opinion?
localization is much, much more than assuming you need to have your game in Portuguese or in Spanish. I think I have spoken about customer support many, many times because it's one of the best examples. The purchase doesn't finish in the moment when the item is delivered to you. Something can happen. And the best thing is to be able to reach out to someone from customer support that is going to hold your hand and go in and help you from top to bottom, understand what happened, talk to the game, even the existing of someone that is the account manager, the person that is the bridge between everybody and that is making sure that everything is happening properly. So of course, when we are talking about localization, we are saying that no, international credit cards are not going to work in Latin America. You are not optimizing your checkout, and that's not the best way to come into this countries. You should localize your game. You should also localize your checkout, your emails. Any sort of communication with the gamer is very important. And again, this is a matter of cooperation. This is a matter of handling local currency. I briefly mentioned taxes. I briefly mentioned legal, but this is very important. And sometimes we're talking about economies with fluctuation, with many topics related to exchange rates, and this cross-border market has a lot that you need to deal with. So the importance of localization is huge.
Absolutely. Well, I really encourage the audience to reach out to Claudia, because the taxes, regulation, all of these very technical issues, of course, we don't have time to go into the specifics today, but they're very pressing and urgent issues that need to be solved. And I think Claudia is available to help people understand that. So I really encourage that. And let's go to the next slide. Just one more element of gaming we need to touch upon before we wrap up. And that is actually the payout experience. We've talked about pay-ins, but there's also this payout or disbursement element related to games, play to earn games, which have really taken off since the pandemic, where you're actually in esports or other gaming opportunities, you're playing and you're actually earning either digital currency or a currency that you can then cash out to a wallet and as income. And this has been a trend we've seen very rapidly grow up in Asia and is starting to take wind in Latin America. And so this really deserves its own webinar, disbursements in digital products. And many of the same principles apply, right? Fast, agile, frictionless, according to the payment method preferred and the way people want to get paid. So just one other element for us to keep in mind. But let's go to our final slide here. And I want to just touch upon the key learnings that we've discussed in this conversation today. So if we go ahead, the next slide, we can I love the fact we've talked about how social gaming is, how interactive, how tightly knit these communities are, and especially in Latin America, where people are passionate. People are passionate about their communities and their hobbies. And so that really adds an additional flavor to the industry. The industry is growing organically in Latin America, propelled by improvements in the payment experience, local payment methods, et cetera. And we've talked a lot about these different strategies that merchants should consider to optimize the spend in gaming and capitalize on this organic growth that we're experiencing. And we have just about 1 minute left. Before I want to ask our speakers to give their final thoughts, but let's go ahead to the next slide. And as we're kind of discussing our final conclusions here, I want to invite all of you to download the full report, because there's a lot of rich data. All the data you saw here, you can see it and study it as you like. Please scan the QR code or access the link here. And we'll just keep this up on as we wrap up. And so, we've talked a lot, we've covered a lot today. And I'd love to hear, what are the final thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience today? Like main conclusions, main learnings, things that you would really want them to take home. Let's start with you, Caio.
Well, I would say that first of all, when you look at payment methods to serve the gaming verticals, you need to think beyond cards, right? So you need to think about transfer, you need to think about cards, you need to think about cash. So you really need to have the variety of payment methods, right? The other thing is coverage, right? So using all the, let's say, the region players to connect and serve these gamers with, a variety of, let's say, payment methods and in the main country. So if you're not present in the main country, so you not will serve well, let's say, the gaming platforms. The other thing is payment culture for each country. So Peru is different from Mexico. Mexico is different from Brazil. So this is really important because if the payment provider does not, think about this, perhaps he will not, provide a good experience for the gamer, and the game platform will lose sales. The other thing is experience, right? So we talk a lot about how device they influence the different journey of payment. So mobile, it's one way, console, it's another way, and PC is another way. And behind the device, there are different type of gamers, right? So you should consider also the device as one of the things to you to provide your payment, let's say, solution and service. So I would say these are the main let's say, call outs that are or outputs of this, let's say, study that we have. And the last point on my side is segmentation. So if you do really precise segmentation, you're gonna get more revenue, you're gonna get more spend, you're gonna have more loyal gamers, and this is let's say success for the game platform and for also for the payment provider. So my 5 cents here, but really interesting this work, and really happy to share this with the payment industry. Really good
Thank
for
you.
the market knowledge.
Well said, Caio. Thank you so much. Claudia, let's go to your final thoughts.
Yeah, I guess Caio said it all. What makes sense to me to say is in regards to how loyal and invested gamers are. So when we think about the payment habits of Latin America, I always remember a colleague with whom I worked for 6 years telling me that he was for hours playing and he was truly invested. He was in an amazing level of the game, and his mother was fed up, so she shut down the electricity in the house. And that was incredibly damaging for him because of all of the investment. And this is very different, for example, from retail, where if you don't have the number of your shoes, you are going to look for a different brand. No, we are talking about people who are truly engaged. And if we cater to their needs, we are going to have amazing results. That is why we talk about localization, about the importance of covering the right payment methods, of having a good user experience, having those KPIs working. This is a vertical that can be incredibly profitable, and where you can have a huge sense of loyalty. So as Caio said, it's a privilege to be here with our backbone of gaming and talking a little bit of these habits. And we truly hope we were able to add some value, to bring updated information, because this vertical is growing and we want to continue to do so.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I love that image. It's, gaming is experiential, it's emotional, right? You spend hours of your life invested in this. And so really honoring that and wanting to uplift that. I love that. So as a wonderful closing thought. So let's just go to our final slide. We'll have some contact information here. So please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or on the website. And you all will be receiving the recording of this session, as well as the slides, and of course the white paper, which is available for download, which has all of the insights and data for you to absorb over time. I want to thank everyone for being here today and for your interest. We didn't have too many questions, but we did have a lot of praise, and just I want to thank you guys, Claudia and Caio, for sharing your expertise, because I do think there's a deficit of information in the market. So thank you guys so much. We'll be in touch soon, and everyone have a great rest of your week. And thank you for joining us. Take care.